Hi, my name is Amber and I live in the Pacific Northwest with my family, and most days you'll catch me in the wood shop running Urban Timber Revival. But I love all things DIY, and today I want to share with you how to make these simple resin or epoxy necklaces. They're very affordable, it's a few simple steps, and it's a great entry level project into using that medium. So I hope you learned some new skills today and enjoy. Okay, before we get started, I'm going to run through the materials and anything incidental we'll talk about on the way. So you're going to need some Mod Podge. I'm using a matte finish. I don't think it really matters, so don't go run out and buying this, anything you have on hand. And we're going to use a brush to spread it. That's pretty easy. We're going to use a box of epoxy or resin. You'll hear me use those words interchangeably. In my mind, they're the same thing. We're going to need some pendant trays. So you can find these at your local craft store or online. And there's all sorts of different finishes, sizes, really anything you can think of you can find online. And you should get a 1-inch punch. So, well, not 1 inch. It's going to depend on the pendants you like. So I'm using a 1-inch pendant, so I'm using a 1-inch punch. If you find a 30 millimeter, you need a 30 millimeter punch. Square, rectangle, same thing, just emphasizing that you need to have these matching. And if you cannot find a punch that meets your needs, just use scissors. But this is a lifesaver. I highly recommend them. And then finally, we just need some images. I have some 1-inch circle images here, but be creative in your use of images. So maybe your favorite greeting card, pictures of your kids, anything that will fit in this circle makes a great pendant. All right, let's get started. Okay, before we get started, I thought I would just pause a moment and show you some images from Amazon and Etsy, just how affordable these are to make. So I'm not endorsed or paid by these people. I just pick these up randomly. When I go to buy it, I just look for the best price that day. So you can see you can buy just the plain trays, or with a glass cabochon, you could just glue on top if the resin makes you nervous. And also you can get your ball and chain there. And you can see this is super affordable, and you could choose nicer like sterling options if you wanted as well. And those circle images, I get all these on Etsy, and I have my own shop as well. I'll show you that later. But just think of anything you're interested in here. Wine, unicorns, it's probably there. And this is my personal Etsy shop, Bebo Shop. It's another little side business I run for graphics if you like the images you're seeing on this class today. But certainly just start with your own sentimental images you have at home, and hopefully you'll come up with a great project. Okay, we're going to get to cutting these now, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You just line up your little punch here to the exact image and give it a cut. So again, you could use scissors, but this is so much faster and very accurate. Okay, and this might seem silly, but I just want to illustrate that you do not need to buy or research images online. Get creative. Maybe you love Trident gum. So I'm just going to line this up to exactly where I want it and give it a little cut. And this is perfect because it's kind of like a heavy cardstock. So think of pictures of your kids. I've done a lot of charms for kids in sports, for moms around Mother's Day, just anything. So we'll move on now. Point made. Okay, so now we're going to start assembling everything. So I'm going to lay out all my charms, lay out all my images, and I'm going to open up this Mod Podge, and we're going to put a little bit of this in the bottom of the charm and be generous with it. You really want to get in all those little edges, because basically we're sealing this image into the pendant so that later when we put resin on it, it's protected. And this is especially important, depending on what type of paper you're using for your image. I really heavily recommend a good cardstock. Even printing your images on photo paper, that's what I like to do. Just get something really sturdy. So I'm just going to put glue in, or Mod Podge, whatever you choose, into all these, and then we'll start pressing these images in here in just a second. So you can see I'm just laying it in there. And with that punch cut, you should be pretty exact. Sometimes you might want to take the tip of your paintbrush and just kind of force it in, and you'll see some of that Mod Podge seep up the sides, and that's a good thing. You're sealing that image into the pendant. And some people do skip this step. I've seen when I was learning how to do this, but your images can become foggy. So I take the time to do it right the first time, and then you'll be happy with the result. Okay, here's another example, and this is a sweet little snowflake charm I found online. And then we're gonna do an outdoor bike one. So I'm just kind of illustrating here too that think of the different holidays, Mother's Day, camping season, Christmas. Okay, so now that those have dried, I'm putting another layer of Mod Podge right on the top, and it's gonna look white to you, but don't worry about it. That will dry and you'll be able to see just fine. And see how I'm really working that into the edges? Again, I'm sealing it into the pendant. Okay, so you can see I'm kind of laying it on thick here, and that's just fine. So I suggest either laying it on thick or maybe doing 2 coats. Better safe than sorry. So you can see that looks foggy and scary. We'll just let it sit for about an hour. We'll be fine. Okay, this is how it looks after about 15 minutes. It's halfway dry, so you can see they're clearing up. In about a half hour, they'll be done. So now it's time to work with your epoxy, and when you open that box, you'll have 2 bottles that come. One is the hardener, so you're going to put an equal amount in each cup, and your epoxy should come with these like little medicine cups with measurements on the side, just like you're dosing medicine, so you can get it exact. I tend to just kind of eyeball it. So we're going to get this other one in here. I'm going to try to get as close as I can. I might need to add more, but do take the time to get it correct so that it does harden correctly. You don't want to end up with sticky charms at the end, which has happened to me before, I know. So we're going to add a little bit more to this one. And I think that looks good. Yep. Okay, so now you mix the epoxy. It's as simple as that. You just pour 1 cup into the other and really try to get it all out of there. You want to use every bit because remember, you want to keep this even. Okay, so I'm just going to stir it. You really want to get it well mixed. And it will look a little foggy and even sometimes bubbly depending on the temperature of your room. So I'm just going to pour it back into the other cup. Again, this is a good way to make sure that you're getting every bit of that epoxy in equal amounts. You just pour it back and forth between the cups a time or 2, and that usually does the trick. Okay, I always do 3 pours. I'm a little paranoid. I go back and forth 3 times, but this should do it. So this time I'm really trying to get every last bit out. And there you go. Okay, we're ready to pour the resin, and I'm showing you a side image of these pendants because some of them are at an angle depending on how the hanging hardware looks. So I'm just going to put them on a penny to make them perfectly even, and that will prevent any resin from draining off accidentally. And see, the snowflake, it's flat. I won't have to do that. But these other ones, they're slightly tipped. You don't want your resin to run off. So I'm going to get those all set up and we'll start pouring. And you can either take that cup and pour it right in the image, or you can take, like I'm using, your little stir stick and just kind of help it in there. So I'll generally put a little bit in and I'll push it out towards the edges here. Just kind of making sure I get in every corner. And this is why I always recommend that good cardstock or photo paper underneath. You know, these images go through a little bit of abuse by the time you're done with them. And I don't know if you caught that, but I pushed it out to the edges, and at the very end I put kind of a dollop on top right in the middle, and that will give you a nice little dome. When they dry, they look really pretty. Okay, we're going to do another one here. So again, just kind of guide it out. And if you didn't notice, I'm doing this on top of a sheet of parchment paper. If that resin was to run off, it's really easy to clean up. You don't want to ruin your table. And you can still generally move your charm if the resin sticks to it. It just is a good surface for this. So I'm building in bulk. I'm going to pull out a whole bunch of charms here, because that little tiny cup of resin will cover a lot of surfaces. Okay, you can see here I have a little dome, and I definitely made a mess, so make sure you get that parchment paper on. One or two are going to spill, that's just life, so always make a few extra. Okay, I'm showing you a close-up of these because as your epoxy or resin, whichever you choose, starts to dry, you're going to see some bubbles lift up, and that's totally normal. There's two ways you can handle it. You can take a little straw and blow on it, and that will pop the bubbles generally. Most people tend to use heat instead, so you can simply take a little lighter and apply some heat to the top, like, yeah, don't get in your chemical, but just kind of put graze some heat over the top, and it will pop them too. And you might have to do this once or twice. Sometimes they're deep and take a bit to rise up. Just don't take too long because you don't want the epoxy to set and then you're stuck with the bubbles. Okay, so after I popped all those bubbles, you just let them sit for 24 hours and they're done. Sometimes less. I always give a good 24 hours. But here's an example of the finished product. So you can see you can do Christmas. I live in Seattle, so I made that little graphic. So cute. Camping. I have some Valentine's Day coming up. Just think of the different applications you can make for these, and you can make some really special gifts for people. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and I will keep uploading classes in the future. Thank you.